Hey everybody, welcome back to another amazing episode of the best darn show on the internet, the Sharon Show. And today we're continuing our series on the Tao. So thank you guys for being with us. And yes, it is a Wednesday. We usually do Thursdays, but life got in the way. We were just going to record this today and then premiere it tomorrow. But we said, you know what, let's just go live on a Wednesday. And it's kind of a foreshadowing because next Wednesday, we were recording with our friend Joe and we are going to put it live on Thursday. But then an opportunity came up for me to be in a podcast in New York City next Thursday on the Anthony Cumia network in his time slot with my friend Pat Oates, who's a comedian. I had him on my show. Check that one out, the Brandon Bonanza show. We're going to get our butts to New York and be on a podcast. He said he wants to talk about conspiracies and fun stuff. So I was like, all right, let's do it. But anyway, so next Wednesday, look for Joe, and Joe's just finding this out now live in the chat. We're going to be live, Joe. So brush your hair. No, I'm just kidding. I should talk.
Or let your hair down.
Yeah.
Whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. What's up, Sharon? How you doing?
I'm good. I was going to say, I like how our show has evolved over time, and I'm having a good time.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We kind of make it what we want it. And yeah, it's just our total creation. You know, we get to have the people we want on and we can talk about all the stuff we want to. And speaking of talking about the stuff we want to, here's today's quote. Today's quote is from Nietzsche, from Edgar Allan Poe. I have an Edgar Allan Poe deck here that I was probably going to pull from. That's why I said that.
Okay.
A thought, even a possibility, can shatter and transform us. And that's Friedrich Nietzsche. And, the stuff that we're talking about with the Tao is definitely could be life shattering. So once you start to incorporate these ideas and really figure out what they mean for you in your own life, dear listener and watcher. So that's why I chose that quote today. I came across it and I thought it was perfect.
Indeed.
So yeah, I have this Edgar Allan Poe tarot deck, and since it's close to Halloween, I figured I'd use it. And next week's Tarot Bowl podcast, which you can get at tarotbowl.com, tarotbull.com. I recorded that earlier today, and it's going to come out on Halloween. And right now we're just doing a series where we each pick a deck each week. Like I'll pick one, then next week she picks one, and we take 4 cards and break them down because we're trying to get away from the Rider-Waite and look at some of the different decks. And cool. I just grabbed the Edgar Allan Poe deck, and she's like, "Oh, this is going to come out on Halloween. It's perfect." I'm like, I wasn't even thinking that. I'm like, accidental perfect. So I think we've talked about this one on here before, though.
Yeah.
Our Sharon Knight veterans are it's no mystery to them. This is no surprise, but yeah, so I'm gonna pull a card and then we can check out what it means. Ooh, Judgment. Oh, this card has nudity. Cover your kids' eyes at home, everybody.
My god.
Oh, it's not that bad. I'm gonna pin myself so a little. Yeah.
There's you see a reflection.
Let's see if I can fix that.
Yeah, just angle it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. There's a lot of lights around here. Yeah, so Judgment, basically it's like a ship. The guy at a ship holding on, and all these other souls that are naked. This guy's weens out. Thanks. And just we said this on the Terrible podcast too. It's like this wasn't made by Edgar Allan Poe. Somebody else made it in his. Yeah,
it's in honor of or dedication or something like that, huh?
I mean, that would have been epic if it was if he created it. Can you imagine that? And I'll read a little bit of what it says here in the book, because it is such a big card, major arcana, and it's like right near the top. It's number 20. Judgment, a descent into the maelstrom, is one of Poe's most terrifying stories. It's a story within a story where a man tells of his experience with one of the strongest whirlpools in the world. The man's experience was so frightening that his hair changed from raven black to white in less than a day. The man was on a fishing expedition with his brothers when a most terrible hurricane forced their ship into the vortex. One of his brothers succumbed to the waves. The other held on to a metal ring on the ship in hopes that he could avoid drowning. The white-haired man who tells the story said that in a moment of clarity, he observed that the larger the items were within the whirlpool, the more rapid their descent. The man courageously jumps off the ship onto a barrel. The barrel doesn't sink as fast as the ship, thus he is saved when the whirlpool subsides. In this image, a whirlpool churns in the ocean. A damaged ship floats helplessly on the edge of the whirlpool. A man holds onto a metal ring as the ship descends. Another man hangs onto a barrel caught in the edge of the whirlpool. The spirit of dead sailors and crew ascend to heaven nakedly. And then the thing I like about this tarot deck is it shows a full page representation of the card. So here, let me go back to me again.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So you really get to see all the detail when you're looking at these cards. See the guy in the back on the barrel. It's a barrel fun. There it is. There we go.
Mhm.
So, anywho, that's our card of the day. What a good card.
Yeah, very neat. Speaking of like trying to show cards up here, Cody's like, you guys need a better way of showing a card so you don't get all the reflection, all that stuff. And he was like saying, like, to get one of those cameras that like you can put a card like down here and then you have a camera looking down at it. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
like you change the screen. I'm like, I don't know. Is that too complicated? I don't know. We'll think about it.
Well, what we could do is pre-select the card ahead of time and then just have a picture of it. And I could share that on the screen.
Yep, we could do that too.
But yeah, either way. Or we could just keep going reflections and,
Whatever.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a card that's well known, I could always Google it and shoot a screen share it too. So we could always search for them.
Yeah.
Going forward. Cool. Awesome. Well,
So,
what are we
should
talking
we
about
start or should I pull a card from the I Ching deck?
Oh, yeah, we have been doing that, huh? Yeah, why don't you do that?
Okay.
It's a common theme we've got going. This Edgar Allan Poe is just a Halloween special.
Halloween special, everyone. And we'll just do a quick I Ching pull. And let's
And you
see.
don't even need a Halloween costume because half the people on that card were just naked. So
yeah, there you go. No
show up to
costume.
the party in your birthday suit.
Okay, so this is funny. I picked the same card from last week. So
Whoa.
we'll just leave it at that. We didn't need to pick a card this week, clearly. We'll stick with Edgar Allan Poe.
That's hilarious.
And the funny
it,
thing is, as I pulled it, I was like, I bet I'm pulling the same card from last week.
That's hilarious.
Like, I was like, it would be really funny if I just pulled the same card from last week.
So if you want to see the meaning of this card, everybody, go back and listen to last week's episode number 83 of the Oversharing Show.
Yeah.
We covered verses 15 and 16 from the Tao, and today we're going to be covering 17 and 18.
Yes, indeed.
All right. So I guess we could just jump into doing that.
May as well. Welcome, Spoons. And Paraplegic.
What's up, Paraplegic? He's back, or he didn't go anywhere? All right. So Paraplegic says, W2F, you guys got to stream at a different time. Just for me, don't you want to help the handicapped? What's up, my peeps? We always try to help the handicap here in the Oversharing Show. That's why we talk about.
That's why we change up the times that we stream. See?
Yeah. Oh, that's weird. I was on 17. I must have scrolled down. I got it right there. I thought I was ready. Here we go. So, as always, we're going to cover 4 different versions of the Tao Te Ching, 4 separate interpretations. And the first one we're going to start with here for verse 17 is the Stephen Mitchell version from 1988. When the master governs, the people are hardly aware that he exists. Next best is a leader who is loved. Next, one who is feared. The worst is one who is despised. If you don't trust the people, you make them untrustworthy. The master doesn't talk, he acts. Ooh, I like that. See, well, we'll get that out later. That's like for politicians. It's like, listen, they don't talk, they act. When his work is done, the people say, amazing, we did it all by ourselves.
This is one of your favorite verses, I think.
Yeah.
You quote this one a lot.
Yeah. It's so true though. But anyway.
Yeah. So the Dwight Goddard from 1919, he entitles it Simplicity of Habit. And he says, when great men rule, subjects know little of their existence. Rulers who are less great win the affection and praise of their subjects. A common ruler is feared by his subjects, and an unworthy ruler is despised. When a ruler lacks faith, you may seek in vain for it among his subjects. I'm assuming you may seek in vain for faith, right? You may seek. How carefully a wise ruler chooses his words. He performs deeds and accumulates merit. Under such a ruler, the people think they are ruling themselves. I like that. I like how we put that.
You know what I also like about both of these versions, really quickly, is they both start and end with the same theme. Right? They both, when the master governs, the people are hardly aware, and then it ends when his work is done. People say, "Amazing, we did all by ourselves." And the same thing here with the Dwight Goddard one. We'll get into that a little more, though, I guess. But I like that because it's like it gives it to you right at the beginning, and then right at the end, it's like, this is the important message, everybody. All right. So, verse 17 by Stan Rosenthal from 1984, the infamous year 1984.
Yes.
Leadership by exception. Man cannot comprehend the infinite, only knowing that the best exists. The second best is seen and praised, and the next despised and feared. Ooh, the sage does not expect that others use his criteria as their own. The existence of the leader who is wise is barely known to those he leads. He acts without unnecessary speech, so that the people say it happened of its own accord.
There you go. Aleister Crowley's version, he entitles it The Purity of the Current. And I'm assuming he means the current of like water, maybe, or of something, not water necessarily, but right?
Energy, water, yeah, flowing.
Something that flows. All right. Now he starts by saying, okay, in the age of gold, the people were not conscious of their rulers. In the age of silver, they loved them with songs. In the age of brass, they feared them. In the age of iron, they despised them. As the rulers lost confidence, so also did the people lose confidence in them. How hesitating did they seem, the lords of the age of gold, speaking with deliberation, aware of the weight of their word. Thus they accomplished all things with success, and the people deemed their well-being to be the natural course of events. That's really cool. I really like this version, and I'll tell you why in a little bit when we review it.
Awesome. Well, I'll stop this for a second so we can kind of chat about this verse now. Yeah, it seems that the first two are pretty close that we read, but then, and it's funny because one's from 1919 and one's from 1988.
Yeah.
Other one from the 80s is like totally different. Stan Rosenthal's version is just totally different. It's more of like an explanation, and the other two seem more like a poem kind of.
Yes.
And then the Aleister Crowley one, I mean, it just looks like it's from the Bible or something. Like,
yeah. And you'll see why in a little bit.
It's very poetic. Cool. All right, let's go back then and we'll break these down. All right, so back up here to verse 17 from Stephen Mitchell. We'll read the first half, or I'll read the first half. When the master governs, the people are hardly aware that he exists. Next best is a leader who is loved. I keep saying that. Who is love? A leader who is loved and loved. Next, one who is feared. The worst is one who is despised. And I think it's very interesting, and we talked about this in the beginning too, how Stephen Mitchell doesn't have titles at all for any of his verses.
Yeah. Somehow he doesn't decide to entitle them. But yes, so the Dwight Goddard version says, when great men rule, subjects know little of their existence. Rulers who are less great win the affection and praise of their subjects. A common ruler is feared by his subjects, and an unworthy ruler is despised. Yeah, they're very similar.
And I like this idea because in both of them, again, like we were saying, they're very similar, but they echo this idea that the true ruler, who's the best ruler, nobody even knows he's the ruler, right? And then next best is one who wins the praise of their subjects or who people actually like. So it's funny that they're telling you that the best ruler is one that nobody even knows about. And if you think about like the way that the Illuminati or all these secret societies are supposed to work, nobody's supposed to know about them. So what's that saying? Are they really the best rulers that we can have in this age? Maybe they are, so maybe you don't get so mad at Bill Gates or Klaus Schwab, even though that video, oh my God, we should put a link. That was hilarious. The Klaus Schwab songs.
Oh, wow. That's hilarious that you say that, because did you recently watch that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Cause I had posted it a while ago, but yeah.
Yeah. I was just catching up in one of the group chats. I totally forgot about some. Once they go to the bottom, I just.
Cause you didn't pin it. You need to pin them.
Yeah, I know. I need to unpin some and repin certain ones.
No,
but
just create a new chat. I'll show you. Create a new folder. Then you can pin as much as you want.
Oh, thanks, Sharon. Good idea. This way I'll be more responsive on Telegram.
Yeah, see?
Great idea. Yeah, I probably should get rid of some of the groups too. I'm like a hoarder when it comes to like internet groups and stuff. I like never leave. I'm just like,
I know. I do too, but then I mute them and then I don't, like, I'll check on them sometimes, but
yeah. All right. Anyway, but yeah, I just wanted to make that point where I like that they're really trying to show us that, and then this hidden hand that everybody's so mad about. Maybe it is the best way for people to rule in this age that we're in. But of course,
so what? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, of course, you get all the leaders like Donald Trump and all these people who are like in your face, but it's very highly suggested that there's like a behind the scenes thing going on,
Yeah, that these are just puppets and pawns. Could it be? Yeah. So Joe asked a question. Forgive my ignorance. You guys have been doing this series for a bit, but I was just thinking, are these 4 versions, 4 different translations, interpretations? So, Brandon, you want to say it or you want me to?
Yeah, we picked 4 different versions, and coincidentally, one of them was one that I really liked, and then Sharon went and looked for some, and then we saw that Aleister Crowley had done one, so we're like, well, we got to include that. And then kind of synchronistically, we realized that you can line each version up with one of the different elements like water, air, fire, and earth. And I guess we could talk about that a little bit as a recap when we're going through these and see if it still holds up. But yeah, that's what
and the way I chose them was it just happened, right? I didn't go looking necessarily, but I already had 2 of the versions in a PDF format. And then when I went to a website to look for more text so that I could actually maybe use them or copy paste them, I can't remember what I was doing, but I ended up making a slideshow and copy pasting the text into the presentation. And I happened to see that I was scrolling and I happened to see Aleister Crowley had his own version. So it was and then when I lined them up here in the presentation, it was just the way it was. I didn't like plan it to be, I just was like, okay, Brandon likes this one. We'll start with this one. And then the next one, I didn't intentionally pick the order. It just happened that way. So, and it's funny because sometimes you'll see the parallels, like we said, between like verse 17, Stephen Mitchell and Dwight Goddard. It seemed to have it like, and they're from totally different decades. And sometimes Dwight Goddard and Aleister Crowley, because they're both kind of in the same time frame, they sometimes like line up. So it's just kind of interesting to see.
Yeah, it is very interesting. My favorite version is that Stephen Mitchell version. That's the one I listen to all the time. So that's where that came from. And of course, once we saw Aleister Crowley had a version, we had to send out the Ravens, go get it.
Mm-hmm.
The Crows or whatever you want to say. Okay. And so what we decided though was this one, the Stephen Mitchell version is very water-like, represents kind of water. The Dwight Goddard version is very earthy. The Stan Rosenthal is very airy, kind of swords version. And then Aleister Crowley, of course, is the fiery version. more esoteric and that nature, of course. So let's see. The beginning here of the Stan Rosenthal one is leadership by exception. Man cannot comprehend the infinite. Only knowing that the best exists, the second best is seen and praised. The next despised and feared. Now, this is cool because they're not even really talking about leadership, right? It's just in the title. So then you have to kind of infer it by what he says in the rest of the verse. And he just opens up right away by stating facts like man cannot comprehend the infinite. Only knowing that the best exists, the second best is seen and praised, which is hilarious because that's what it's like with the Over Sharon show. We're the best that exists, but we're not as popular because the second bests are seen and praised. Something like that. And then the next is despised and feared. And it's cool because you get the duality, right? So he's bringing up this whole duality thing where one is praised and loved or whatever, and the other one's feared and despised. But the true one, the best one, isn't even like known or talked about. It's just known that it's the best. So they don't even have to you don't even have to give it praise, It's kind of like it's just automatically assumed. Oh yeah, like Michael Jordan is the best basketball player ever, so we don't have to. Maybe that's a bad example, but we don't have to even talk about that. We could just, we're gonna have to decide who second best is. And sometimes that happens in like competitions where when somebody's way far ahead and they're really good, everyone's like, we know this guy's gonna get first. So this is really just a battle for second. I've seen that before. It's like Michael Phelps, right? His year that everyone knew he was just gonna crush everything. So they're really battling for the silver. It's that same thing.
That's
crazy.
funny. Just to go back to Joe real quick, he said, I was under the impression the Tao was one thing. So I was wondering if saying 4 versions just meant 4 different translations. Yes, it does. So each of these people, and yes, it's written in Chinese. It wasn't originally in English. It was in Chinese. So each of these people either knew some Chinese enough to like translate it or knew other people who had translated something and maybe made their own kind of interpretation of it. I don't remember if they all knew Chinese or like I don't really know how that.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I don't know if they're all direct translations that the author made themselves, but they're definitely 4 different interpretations on what the authors could gather on them. I think the Stephen Mitchell one, he actually looked at the ideograms, whatever they call them, the Chinese ideograms, because there's a little intro on the video, and it might even be in the book. I think we read it in the beginning, not all of it maybe, but in that intro he does explain how he looked at the ideograms himself too. So yeah,
and
I'm
then
sure
I remember
he knows that he spoke Chinese. Go ahead.
Yeah, I remember when we did the intro. If you Joe, if you want to check out the intro to this series, it was like the first episode we did on it. I think we read that Aleister Crowley had, or did we read Aleister? We did. We read Aleister Crowley's intro. But I think he talked about how he ended up like relating it to Kabbalah. And so that's when for him, that's when it all came to, for him, he just was like, oh, wow, I get it. Like, I can totally relate this to Kabbalah. So now it makes sense to me. So that's what I remember from that.
Yep. And that was episode number 71. So if you want to go back, and I will put a link right now in the chat, because if you're not aware, this Over Sharon Tao series has its own playlist on YouTube. So if you just want to go through and check out all the Tao episodes in rapid succession, we made it easy for you because that's what we do here. Chinese, Japanese, dirty knees, look at these. Paraplegic said Chinese, Japanese. I knew where he's going. Listen, we're around the same age, paraplegic. We're both from the East Coast. We used to say that too, like Chinese, Japanese, dirty knees, look at these. And we lift our shirt up.
Oh my God.
When we were like 5 or however old we were. Yeah, it's. Or
except he wrote,
me play joke, me go pee pee in your coke. Yeah, all the great.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so he said
I'm gonna get
Chinese.
kicked off of YouTube. Sorry. Go ahead.
Japanese. I'm gonna count most of them, but yeah. Okay. All righty. So
and I will pin it for everybody. Pin the message. Okay. So
Okay,
I
cool.
shared a link in there, everybody, so you can check it out. And if you're listening at a later date, just look at that playlist, or I can even throw. I think it's in the description. If not, I'll throw it in there. And yeah, you can eat your heart out to your over Sharon's delight extent. I don't know what I was saying there. Okay, let's get back to the.
Yeah.
I'm just
All right.
scatting at this point. I'm just scatting, man.
So I'll be reading the Dwight Goddard version, right? Or no? Are we?
I still have to read the second part of the Stephen Mitchell, I believe.
Oh no, we haven't finished. You
Oh,
did Stan Rosenthal, right? Oops,
oh, you didn't
sorry.
do the Crowley one? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I need
Yes,
to
you're
do the
right.
Crowley
Yep.
one. Sorry. Yeah. All right. So Crowley entitles this The Purity of the Current. In the age of gold, the people were not conscious of their rulers. In the age of silver, they loved them with songs. Sorry, they loved them with songs. In the age of brass, they feared them. In the age of iron, they despised them. As the rulers lost confidence, so also did the people lose confidence in them. How hesitating. Oh, sorry, I kept reading. Sorry. I just
Oh,
meant
yeah.
to end
No,
in the
you could
age of
have read that all day. Don't worry about it.
uh
I like how he uses the ages. That's like a
yes.
perfect example. And it also almost lines up with the whole like yellow belt, white belt thing from another content creator. I can't quite remember his name. But he still has invaluable wisdom. So it's great because you get the fear aspect, you get the anger, you get love, and you get one that's like not even aware of it. So it's kind of just like you don't even care. So if you take these four ages and then the way that they felt about their rulers, you can actually apply that to your own life and your own worldview and how things affect you. And if you're not even bothered by it, and I think I sent you that meme. It was like a pyramid, and it was like all different ways of feeling about things. At the top, it's like I accept it, and then above it, it was like I don't even care about any of this shit anymore. Like the guy was floating around. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, sorry, say that again. I
There
was
was a
sorry
meme.
distracted.
Yeah, no problem. There was a meme. I'll look for it and see if I can find it. But it was a pyramid, and like at the different stages of the pyramid, people were talking about
Oh
how,
yes, yes. And
yeah,
at the very top it's upside down and he's
yeah.
like,
It's
I
up
don't
to. I was
care.
like, I don't even give a shit. Like,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah, so funny.
Sorry, I was trying to rearrange some images over here that I want to slide share if that's okay.
No problem. You want
Um
to do that now?
yeah.
Okay.
So when I was looking at this verse in preparation for this episode or this reading, I noticed the age of gold, the age of silver, brass, iron, etc. Reminded me of a couple of things. It reminded me of the yugas, right, in the Vedic, I guess the Vedic type of reckoning. And I remembered the story in the Bible where King Nebuchadnezzar has a dream about a statue. So I wanted to show that and show a couple of pictures. So let me share my screen for a second here.
Sweet. I'll try to find that meme.
Okay. So I'm gonna. Oh, I guess I don't know how we'll do this, but like I might be able to share multiple screens. Well, I'll just share this one for now. I guess, is that big enough? Can you see that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Perfect.
Okay. So in Daniel 2, it says, Daniel 2, verse 29. I'll read starting from verse 31. As you, O king, were watching, a great statue appeared. A great and dazzling statue stood before you, and its form was awesome. The head of the statue was pure gold. Its chest and arms were silver. Its belly and thighs were bronze. Its legs were iron, and its feet were part iron and part clay. So I'll stop reading there too. But that reminded me of so I'll just share just a quick screen share of the statue, what it looks like. Can you see that?
Yep. Oh
So
yeah.
like I mean, people who, have studied the Bible probably have seen something like this, but you have that head of gold and the breast of silver, the thighs of brass, I guess that's here, and then the legs of iron. And then of course in the Bible, in this verse, it talks about the feet are iron and clay. Something else it reminds me of is the yugas. And I will share that here as well. I saw this somewhere on I didn't go looking for a different screenshot of this, but I just saw this one time on Telegram somewhere. So it's just talking about the golden age, which they call Satya, the silver age, which they call Treta, the bronze Divapara, and iron, which is the one we always talk about, the Kali Yuga, right?
Yeah.
This one only has 4. The Bible has 5, with the feet being different. So the way I learn information or try to like consolidate information is by sometimes I make a little what'd you call this? Now I'm blanking out. A spreadsheet.
Oh yeah, there you go.
I make a spreadsheet because it helps me comprehend information. So I made this yesterday, and you have the various ages, and I was looking at the Bible version. It's related to the head. The golden age is related to head, and the yuga name is Satya, and then the yuga description, as I just looked up like what people think about this age. So it's an age of wisdom and truth, considered the most spiritually elevated and ideal epoch, which is like the British pronunciation of that word. Marked by truth, righteousness, and harmony. So that's this golden age. The silver age is related in the Bible to the breast of that statue, which is silver. The Yuga name is Treta, and the description is it is characterized by a slight decline in spirituality and moral values compared to the Golden Age. The brass or bronze age, because the Bible calls it brass and the Yugas call it bronze. But if I'm not mistaken, brass and bronze are just different, slightly different. What is it called when you melt 2 metals together? I forgot.
Alloys?
Yes, it's just an alloy of copper and something else. It's an alloy of copper. I forgot what it is.
Brass is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, brass and bronze are just alloys of
Alloy,
copper.
yeah.
They're different
Yeah,
alloys
yeah.
of copper. So I don't think they're not the same, right? They're two different alloys, but they are still alloys of copper. So I think that's probably why. And then their names start with BR, both of them. This is interesting. So anyway, that age is related to the thighs in the Bible, to that statue. And the Yuga name is Divapara, if I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But it's a further decline in spirituality and moral values. Materialism and desire begin to dominate people's lives, and spiritual knowledge is progressively forgotten. That's the kind of description of what the Yuga is about. And then, of course, we have the Iron Age, which is related to the statue, the legs of the statue. And the Yuga name is the Kali, right? The Kali Yuga, which makes me think of Kali Ma, right? Kali, we pronounce it a little differently.
The Destroyer.
The Destroyer, right? And this is an unspiritual age of ignorance, sin, and short lifespan, characterized by significant decline in spirituality and moral values. So anyway, that I just wanted to share that because That's what I thought of when I read Aleister Crowley's version of this verse.
Yeah, I like that. It's funny because the Kali thing, first time I was introduced to Kali was through Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
That's funny because I've started to watch that and I got to that part where they're just like doing the soul sacrifice thing, and I'm just like, I can't watch this.
It's so cheesy.
I'm watching it in pieces because it's just so dark. I'm like, holy crap, jeez.
Yeah. It has a happy ending, don't worry. Not for everybody involved. But yeah, it's funny because of the way that this stuff kind of seeps into our culture through things like Indiana Jones. And they just show a little bit of Hinduism, but they show the dark side, of course, right? Like somebody who the interpretation way out of whack, you know, and it's like,
yeah.
And they're literally sacrificing people to Kali. Whereas I think you sent something to me, and I knew about this concept too, where in Hinduism, what they'll do is they feed all of their desires, or they feed their hatred or anger and all these negative things that they want, or maybe they could even be looked as positive, but they feed that to Kali, right?
And
Kali,
she can destroy that.
Yeah, she just eats it all. So it's amazing the different interpretations. Where in Indiana Jones are like pulling out people's hearts and burning them in the lava.
Oh my god!
But I do like the rocks that glow. That's pretty cool. And of course, short round. Caveat, Indy, caveat. I'm really gonna get this kicked off
Jones, Dr. Jones.
You know the song "Mr. Jones" by the Counting Crows? Well, I have a mix.
Mr. Jones and Me.
Mr. Jones. I have a mix that I'll play a lot during like a cocktail hour or whatever. And Mr. Jones, like the second song on it. So I hear it a lot. And I always say Dr. Jones. I'm always like Dr. Jones, like in the work, like say it on the microphone, but like singing it to myself or to my coworkers. I'm always like Dr. Jones.
And me.
So there's a little bit of humor for you.
I recently heard that song. I hadn't heard it in a long time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a bad tune. It's pretty good.
And me tell each other fairy tales.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot.
Look at all the beautiful women.
She's looking at me. Oh no.
Joe says, haha, you can make fun of Asians right now. No one cares. Yeah, you can't make fun of the people who their thing begins with a J, but you can make fun of C, the Chinese. It's fine. Or the Japanese. You just can't make fun of the other J's. You know what we're talking about. Anyway, yeah, there's a war on apparently or something. I don't know. I just look at memes. But yeah, and shout out to Paraplegic. Yes, Aleister Crowley. He said the only thing he's ever known about him is that Led Zeppelin moved into Aleister Crowley's old house and became saint worshippers. Yeah, we just think he's like a big troll. We think he was like trolling everybody, and apparently he was anti-Zionist. So that'll tell you everything you need to know about why he's been demonized for the last 100 years. But yeah, he probably was just a troll. But he did leave a great tarot behind and a pretty good Tao version. So what are you gonna do? All right. Speaking of the Tao,
yeah,
I like that. Thank you for that, Sharon. That was great. Let's bring it back up to the top so we can read the bottom of the Stephen Mitchell version. All right. So we're gonna do the second half. Everybody now. Start with the Stephen Mitchell from 1988. If you don't trust the people, you make them untrustworthy. The master doesn't talk, he acts. That reminds me of those who know don't talk, those who talk don't know, right? It's just he acts. Yep. When his work is done, all the people say, amazing, we did it all by ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's funny because that you don't just have to like be a ruler of a nation to learn what that's all about. All right. They say the wise ruler, but it could just be that you're a parent, or it could be you're like the boss, or you own a company, or you just have some people, under you in some capacity. And this is telling you the best way to manage or rule them is to let them think that you're not even there, that they're just getting it all done.
Yeah. But, I have like something to say about that when I used to work where I used to work. And, people probably think people who, never mind. I'll just tell my story. So I got to this place where I was very new at this job. It was like I was put into this, like I got this position where I hadn't been really trained on it. I just kind of like the position opened up and I got the position. So I was learning off this one guy who was in the group, and he was the only one in the group. And then 6 months later, he left the group to go into another group. So I was kind of left by myself, and I was kind of like, holy smokes, this is BS. Like there's nothing to tell me what I need to do. I kind of have to like figure this out on my own. So what I started to do was like kind of document it and like make it into kind of a process, because like that's how I work in my mind. I can't like it can't just be like willy-nilly, just like I have to kind of, you saw me put a spreadsheet together.
Yeah, she
like,
really like structure. She was an engineer, everybody, just so you know. So
well, that was the title, right? So
yeah.
So I put together this process, and I was like, I don't want to be the only one to know this. If I want to go on vacation, I want to be able to go and not have to be on call or anything. So I want to be able to teach this to other people. And my team started growing because we started hiring more people on the team. And I ended up putting together the process so other people would know what to do when I was gone. And then they could eventually do it themselves. Like I didn't have to be there and explain everything. So I was replaceable, and that I was totally okay with that. I really didn't care. Like there were people that I worked with who did not want to be replaceable. Like they would make it so that they were the point of contact, and it was very annoying, because like if they went out of town or if they were overworked, which is what they were, when you're like the point of contact, you're overworked because you're trying to do everything for everybody. And I just found that so aggravating and so annoying. But anyway, I just wanted to share that experience that I had, which was like, it's okay to like be replaceable. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, your way was more in line with the Tao, right? People didn't it's like they didn't have to be aware that you existed. There was already a method in place.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Okay, so you're gonna read now the Dwight Goddard version.
Yeah. So I'll read the second part of this verse 17.
Oh, and then also really quickly, Joe said the last part, he said in the chat, like a maestro in an orchestra. That's how I see it. I think there's a heart in my way. Yeah, that's how I see it in the context of the Tao and leader. That is, yeah, totally. Or think of like an invisible maestro, right? Like one that the people can't even see, but he's still direct.
Like somebody just says go and they know where they're at and they can go.
Yep. And the negative of that would be like a puppet master, right? Where you don't see the strings because they're puppet mastering it. So it'd be like the inversion of it.
Oh yeah, good call.
It just popped into my brain. All right, back to this Tao. Here we go.
All right. So the second part, verse 17, Dwight Goddard. When a ruler lacks faith, you may seek in vain for it among his subjects. You may seek in vain for faith among his subjects. How carefully a wise ruler chooses his words. He performs deeds and accumulates merit. Under such a ruler, the people think they are ruling themselves.
Yep. So we get, again, like I said earlier in the episode, where they repeat the beginning at the end. So that's really cool. And then also this does line up really well with the Stephen Mitchell version. I mean, I should just pull it back up because we can we'll highlight it. It just looks like Stephen Mitchell saying it in a clearer way for a more modern audience. Right. If you don't trust the people, you make them untrustworthy. When a ruler lacks faith, you may seek in vain for among his subjects. So basically, if the ruler doesn't have faith, then his subjects don't have faith either. Same thing.
And if faith, what is faith? Trust. Trust is faith.
Yeah. Trust without my mom used to, when we were in that whole born again Christian thing that I've talked about a bunch when I was like in fourth grade, My mom had this thing on the wall. We used to go to this Christian bookstore, and she got a bunch of little different inspirational things. And I remember one. It was faith is not belief without seeing. It's trust without reservations.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's what that reminds me of. Words of
Well,
wisdom.
go ahead.
I was just going to share the Tao again. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to read that verse
Oh, yeah.
with the word trust. So I could read Dwight Goddard's when
Yeah.
a ruler lacks trust, right? When people don't trust the ruler, you may seek in vain for their trustworthiness among his subjects, right? Or for
Yeah.
trustworthiness.
Yeah, it plugs in perfectly.
That's crazy.
That's a crazy synchronicity too with that thing on the wall. And then we just kept it on the wall. So I think it's still up at my parents' house actually in
Oh,
the back.
wow.
Yeah,
Say it
I should take
again.
a picture of it. It was a picture of a bird eating something out of somebody's hand, and it said, "Faith is not belief without seeing; it is trust without reservation."
Reservation. Explain that.
Yeah, so it means it's trust without having to validate or having to have, I guess you would say, reservations about something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you just have faith in it, and you don't have, I mean, again, it's the born again Christian stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
in the way you could perceive it in your own life, it's like you have faith in yourself, right? You have trust in your own
Abilities.
intuition, right? Without any reservations, without any preconceived notions going in, without the past. You let the past go, and you could focus right on your intuition in the present moment.
Trust the plan.
Trust the plan. There you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
I
right.
like
And we'll be
it.
talking about the next Q drop on our next episode. Just kidding. They're probably still dropping things, I bet, though. Dropping the ball is what they're doing. All right. So, I went too far. Here we go. Stan Rosenthal from 1984. We'll read the second half. The sage does not expect that others use his criteria as their own. The existence of the leader who is wise is barely known to those he leads.
Hmm.
He acts without unnecessary speech, so that the people say it happened of its own accord. Now, this part correlates a little better with the first two versions, right? This half, whereas the first half got a little airy, I guess we can say, with his words, where he's really trying to break it down with like this existential kind of stuff, right? Like philosophy. The first part reads kind of like philosophy, and then the second part is more like you'd see in the Dwight Goddard in the Stephen Mitchell version.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that. The sage does not expect that others use his criteria as their own. It makes me go back to my account of what I did when I was working where I worked. Because I put something together. I just said, look, this is a mess. Nobody knows what's going on. There's no process. I'm going to make something here. And you can change it if you want. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm just kind of putting a framework together here. Like, make it better. I don't care. I don't expect you to think that it's perfect. I don't think it's perfect. Fix it, make it better. So I didn't expect them to use my stuff as like perfection or as their own. They could.
You don't want it to be like set as a standard for the whole company. You're just like, this is the way we're going to do it in my little part of the company.
Yeah, well, to actually put something together, a framework together, because it just didn't exist before. It was in someone's head. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Then I'm glad you highlighted that sentence, because it goes back to like what we always say with woke raping people, or everyone just has to do it till they're done, whatever they're stuck in, whatever cycle that they're currently stuck in, that they want to break out of, or hopefully they'll break out of one day. It's the same thing, right? Because he says the sage does not expect that others use his criteria as their own. I mean, that on its own could be the verse. You know what I mean? Like, let it go. Not everyone's gonna worship your God or see things the way that you see them and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I love it. All right, let's get to the
Yeah. Joe is saying something. He said,
on the
barely known in this version, so not invisible. I see three of these as different in translation, the same context. One has similar words, but a different context.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah, they do sometimes vary, very a lot. There's
And
always
then,
one that's a little bit different.
yeah, and this week it's definitely Aleister Crowley. He just hits it out of the park with this one. Uh, thanks, Joe. And if you guys like Joe and his input and insight, next week he'll be on the show. And allegedly he has a webcam, I heard. I don't know if this is true or not. So maybe we can actually see his face. Which Sharon and I did get to see his face back in August. I
In
can't believe
real life.
that was like what 3 months ago now. It goes
I
by
can't believe that. Was it? No way.
2 months, 2 months, right?
Okay.
Yeah, months.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's not November yet. All right. Almost. All right, back to the Dell.
I will read the Aleister Crowley part 2 of verse 17. As the rulers lost confidence, so also did the people lose confidence in them. How hesitating did they seem, the lords of the age of gold, speaking with deliberation, aware of the weight of their word. Thus they accomplished all things with success, and the people deemed their well-being to be the natural course of events. He kind of ends in a very similar way to the others, but the rest of it is different again.
Yeah, and he also is using the past, the way things were allegedly in the past, as a guide to all this, whereas everybody else just kind of takes attributes and lists them, lists off the attributes. Aleister Crowley actually takes a time that he says existed. I'm sure it probably did, but we all know, who knows. I think all this just started yesterday and the rest was a dream. Yeah, but so he takes it and compares it to the way things were with the different ages, which I really, really like, because it actually lets you kind of like you did. You dove into it and you looked into the ages and what they meant, and the different consciousnesses of people at the time and all that stuff. And that this probably falls back into the realm of the law of one, because if you think of the way that people ascend, everyone thinks that the golden age is something that we want to get to and we want to attain to, but maybe we start off in the golden age because that's all we can handle with our consciousness. And then as the chaos comes in and all this craziness comes in, that's when we're doing the real work. That's when we're actually raising our consciousness quicker and faster. Because during the golden age, and we've talked about this before, if it was a golden age, why are you going to bother even trying to raise your consciousness? You're just going to do your thing and you're probably not even going to think of these things, right?
Yeah, nobody really has evil in their hearts. Everybody's having a great old time, fat, dumb, and happy.
It's like when you start working out, if you're smart, you start with lighter weights and you work your way up, or hiking or whatever, right? You don't just hike 10-mile mountain, you ease into it. And it's the same kind of thing, but I think people just have it backwards because they want to be in the golden age so bad because they see that this time is terrible. But to me, it's kind of like a hiker who's on like when I was doing through hiking on the Appalachian Trail back in like 2008, we'd go for like a weekend or whatever, and we do like 16 miles a day. It was crazy. So it would be like somebody who was doing 16 miles a day going, man, I wish I only had to do 1 mile a day. Like that would be great if I just had to walk around and hang out in this pond. So yeah, that would be fun, but you don't get as far, right? So when you're doing 16 miles a day, you're really covering land and you're seeing everything. So not that one's better than the other. It's a better frame of reference than to just think, oh, it's the shit time to live,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Less victimness in that point of view also, I might add. All right. So I think we can go, you want to go on to the next verse?
Yes, I think we can. It's a shorter one. I was able to put them in one slide.
Ooh.
Because it's very, very short.
Oh, cool. All right. sometimes like they say short and sweet, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we'll start here. I'll start with the Stephen Mitchell version from 1988. When the great Tao is forgotten, goodness and piety appear. When the body's intelligence declines, cleverness and knowledge step forth. When there is no peace in the family, filial piety begins. When the country falls into chaos, patriotism is born. I love this verse, by the way. I can't wait till we get to the breakdown of it because it's so mind blowing to me,
Awesome.
anyway. Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
All right. So we have Dwight Goddard's version. He entitles it The Palliation of the Inferior. I did not look up what palliation is, but I can.
I could look it up if you want. Oh,
Okay. Yeah.
we looked up another P word, by the way, that we could talk about this end of this episode. When I was doing the terrible podcast, and this word came up in the book. And we'll save that for later because I think you're gonna love this. It's like very interesting, and I'd never heard of this word before. So
Okay, I found palliation.
Oh, good. Go ahead.
All right. So palliation is the act or process of relieving a patient's suffering without curing the disease that is causing it.
Oh, sounds like modern medicine, right? Like just treating the
palliative care. That's where the word palliative care comes from. Holy freaking
it's right in the words. They're not even trying to lie. They're like, we're just treating the symptoms, man. We're not actually treating the cause.
Oh, wow. Palliative care. You know what palliative care is, though, right?
It sounds familiar,
but end
me.
of life care. It's like when they put you in, what do they call that
hospice?
When they put you in hospice.
Yeah, because there's nothing we can do for you. We could just, I mean, the funny thing is it's all palliative care, right? Like from the beginning, like
that's
anything
true.
you're going, well, most things. Yeah.
Yeah. And then another definition is the act of mitigating or concealing the gravity of an offense by excuses, apologies, etc. Wow.
Yep. And Joe in the chat said this time is great. I don't know what everyone is on about. Yeah, exactly. No, yeah. I agree, man. Yeah, it's like I was gonna say this earlier, but I might as well say it now. It's like I've said this so many times, but when Frodo says to Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, he's like, I wish I wasn't alive to see such times. And Gandalf looks at him and he's like, so have many people who have lived to see such times, but it's not their choice. That the time they live is not their choice, just what to do with the time they're given, something like that. But yeah.
Okay, it's funny you say that because I was going to look up the verse where Jesus says to them, many have wished to be, or something like that.
Oh,
I'm gonna have to look it up now.
Gandalf, right? What are you trying to say? Walking in the woods beach, trying to wheel and getting stuck everywhere. I'm the victim, I say, asphalt paths everywhere. And Joe says, exactly, B. Go buy Bear Pelagics coffee, everybody, so he doesn't have to be such a victim. Call him. We don't even have a website to give you. You just have to call him. He'll put his phone number in there. Don't worry. And if you're reading this, just leave a comment and we'll put his phone number in there for you. Go ahead.
Okay, so Luke 10, verse 24 says, for I tell you that many prophets and kings desired to see what you see, but did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but did not hear it. It reminds me of that verse. And I was going to say that, and then Joe said it and you said it. So it's just funny. I thought of it too, but I wasn't going to say anything. But now that he did, I figured I'd just read the verse.
Meant to be. Yeah, I love that verse. I had that on my Instagram for a while. That was like many people have wanted to see what you've seen and could not. Or have strived to see it. Well, they could see it if they watch the Oversharing show. So I got to tell them, unless they get bored, and then it's just they're just not meant to see it. All right, back to the Tao. Here you go.
Was that what was that a reference to that we just did? What reminded you of that?
Of the Lord of the Rings thing?
Yeah. What reminded you of that?
Oh, we were looking up the word palliation.
Oh,
And then
oh,
Joe
oh.
made that comment about, I don't know what people, why is it so bad? It's
Okay, got it, got
time's
it.
not bad. Yeah. It was the lovely Joe. Again, if you want to get more of his wisdom, next week he will be here live.
Yeah, in 1 week because we're doing
Next
it on
Wednesday.
Wednesday. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, that was interesting. The palliation of the inferior, and palliation was just relieving a patient's suffering without curing the disease causing it, or the act of mitigating or concealing the gravity of an offense. Okay, I think it's the second meaning, right? Don't you think?
Yeah.
The act of mitigating or concealing the gravity of an offense by excuses and apologies. Yeah. Okay. So, like, here we go. When the great Tao is lost sight of, we still have the idea of benevolence and righteousness. Prudence and wisdom come to mind when we see great hypocrisy. When relatives are unfriendly, we still have the teachings of filial, he says filial piety as well. Oh, and so does Stan Rosenthal. Wow.
Someone was looking on someone's
They
answer.
were looking at each other's work, maybe. We still have the teachings of filial piety and paternal affection. When the state and the clan are in confusion and disorder, we still have the ideals of loyalty and faithfulness.
I got plenty to say, but we're going to keep going. We'll come back to that. All right. Stan Rosenthal from 1984. The decay of ethics. When the way of the Tao is forgotten, kindness and ethics need to be taught. Men learn to pretend to be wise and good. All too often in the lives of men, let's try that again. Filial piety and devotion arise only after conflict and strife. Just as loyal ministers all too often appear when the people are suppressed.
I'm liking his. I feel like his version gives me more clarity.
Yeah, and
just
airy version, so it's perfect.
And what?
It's the airy, sorty version, so
yeah, it makes sense. So just so everybody knows, filial is of or relating to. Of relating to or befitting a son or daughter. Also noting or having the relation of a child to a parent. So that's what that, like, relationship between parent and child is what filial is.
All right.
I just looked it up. I kind of had a feeling of what it meant because in Portuguese, filho means son, I think. And I knew that. I knew that meaning. All right. So Aleister Crowley entitles verse 18, The Decay of Manners. When man abandoned the way of the Tao, benevolence and justice became necessary. Then also was need of wisdom and cunning, and all fell into illusion. When harmony ceased to prevail in the 6 spheres, it was needful to govern them by manifesting sons. Oh, he says manifesting sons instead of filial piety, huh? When the kingdoms and races became confused, loyal ministers had to appear. Wow.
Very interesting.
Indeed.
All right. Well, I guess we can go into the breakdown of these. So I see, obviously, I mean, it's the same verse, but a lot of the same messages here, just kind of said in a different way, but they all seem kind of close here. We'll figure out when we go back. I'll see if I change my mind on that, but there we go. All right. So when the great Tao is forgotten, goodness and piety appear. So we all know that Tao is the way. So when the way is forgotten, goodness and piety appear, which means to me that we don't need goodness or piety or people to look good or pious when everyone's following the Tao. Everybody kind of just does their thing and it works. Nobody has to like point out, it's like It's like if you work with somebody and they're like, oh, I just, I did this. And like, yeah, that's your job. Like, it's funny, Patos, I mentioned him in the beginning, but he would talk about how like you never really bomb or you never really kill. Like you could on stage as a comedian, right? So you could say, oh, I killed it, was great. Everyone was laughing. And he'd always be like, yeah, but that's your job. Like that's what you're supposed to do, right? Is make everybody laugh. So why are you patting yourself on the back? So it's the same kind of thing, right? It is our job to be it is the way to be pious and good or whatever, so we don't have to flaunt it. And then when the body's intelligence declines, cleverness, oh hang on, I didn't share.
Can I say something about that Tao and the Tao's forgotten?
Please.
So to me, when I see this, I think of like rules, right? And regulations, like you must be XYZ, you must be good, you must be pious. That usually makes people like overly conscious, overly self-conscious about it. And could it be that sometimes people are like, oh, really? Do I? And then they do the opposite, right? Like when you tell kids, these are the rules. And then they're like, oh, so I'm not supposed to do this. Well, how about I do it? Let's see what happens, right? So when the Tao is forgotten, when you forget the rules, the goodness and the piety will just appear by nature, because nobody is trying to like abide by the rules or not abide by the rules. They're just being, they're just doing. And what is human nature is just, we are made in the image of God. We are made to, we are made good. It's, I think a lot of the potentially could it be the rules and the regulations and the lines drawn and the, you need to do XYZ that makes people go nuts.
Yeah, I love that, because we both read one sentence and had different interpretations of it, but they both kind of mean the same thing, and we both got something different out of it. So that's pretty cool. I like that. But yeah, you're 100% right, because you're looking at it like as if the Tao was forgotten, kind of like we were talking about with the last verse when we were talking about the leader that is not seen, like nobody knows. Yeah.
Yeah. When you're not worried about all those things. It also made me think of like, just going back to my example of where I worked, and I had to put in place something, right? Because it was all at the beginning in someone's mind, right? And no one else knew what to do, right? But I set up kind of a framework for it. And then other people saw that and they just had the framework. But then once they could forget it if they want to, like the actual steps, maybe they just like, it becomes part of their second nature. And they are just like, oh yeah, first we get this, then we need to do this, then we need to do this, and then we need to order the parts here, do this, and then the product gets shipped. Like it just will happen because people kind of know what the next step is, and they've forgotten. They don't need the rule book anymore because they kind of just know what to do. It's like when I make coffee, like I know my measurements now. Like I know how many grams of coffee, to weigh, and all these the water and the ice, because I make it with ice. I know all those things now. I don't have to go look at the recipe. Now, if I haven't made it in a while, yeah, I have to go back and look, but I don't, once I get in the like roll with it, I can make it by,
off of memory. Just like,
off my memory.
Basically. Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, cooking is often like that. Sometimes you'll look up recipes, and after you do them for a while, you're like, I already know how to do this.
Yeah,
I can make my mac and cheese in peace.
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing, so Joe in the chat says, the funny thing, Sharon, if you strip away everything, thoughts and beliefs, you find yourself in a space that's pure and in the present moment. Joy and peace arise on its own by default. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So logically, that tells you that it's the foundation of consciousness.
I love that. I love that.
See the mind-blowing stuff this guy's coming up with? You got to be here next week, people. I'm telling you, we're going to talk about vampires.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excited about it. Anyway, other stuff too, I'm sure.
He says it just is, but it happens to be benevolent and loving. So yeah. just being, to just be.
Yeah, it actually reminds me of something Joe said before, because we were talking about natural law, and this might have been on an episode where he was on it with us, or maybe just in our private conversations. I can't remember, but he was saying how you know, you shouldn't have to tell people about natural law or like explain what it is. Like that's just the default that people should live by. Like if they're going off their conscious, right? If they're going by their intuition, that's what they're gonna default to, kind of thing. Amazing.
I love it.
All right, let's get back to this. Back to the
That was just the first line, you guys.
Yeah, just the first line.
This verse is jam-packed, apparently.
Yeah. When the body's intelligence declines, cleverness and knowledge step forth. When there's no peace in the family, filial piety begins. When the country falls into chaos, patriotism is born. Now, I think they're all kind of saying the same thing, just with different examples. And I like the last example because everybody knows about being patriotic, right? Especially in this country. Everybody knows about waving flags, and especially if you were around for that September that happened 22 years ago in 2001. I'm sure you remember the fervency of the patriotism. And this really blew my mind when I first heard it, because I always thought patriotism could be like a good thing. But this is saying, like, if a nation declines, that's when the patriotism comes out, because people start to have to be proud of what they were or what the country is or what it stands for. And they have to tell you how great they are, right? They have to show you and tell you instead of just being great. You know, to call attention to how awesome the we're such a great nation. Like, you shouldn't have to say that if you really are a great nation. Why do you even have to mention it? Everyone just knows, right? So we know you're lying, Bush or whatever. No.
What is it? The truth needs no defense, right? Or it's like you don't need to proclaim a truth. If people know it, you don't need to proclaim it.
Exactly.
So
100%. Here, I'll bring this back up so you can read the other verse.
So when the body's intelligence declines, cleverness and knowledge step forth. Where are you taking from that?
I would say it's kind of similar to the nation with the patriotism. So when the body's intelligent, and you could say the
body's breaking down or getting sick or what?
I would say more the body's intelligence. They might be talking about a group of people. You could take it as the physical body, but if you look at it as like a group of people, when their intelligence declines, right? When they're not as smart, when everybody kind of gets dumbed down, then they talk about cleverness. And, you know, that's when they bring up, oh, cleverness. And I have all this knowledge and I'm so clever. Whereas before you didn't. It's like defending the truth. You don't have to tell anyone you don't have to tell anyone your IQ, you know, like. Either they like you and trust you or they don't. You gotta keep reminding them of how high your IQ is. But you know, right. Again, no judgments. It's just an example. So yeah.
And then when there's no peace in the family, filial piety begins. So like when, let's say, no peace is like parent against child or child against parent and arguing and fighting, whatnot. Is that trying to say like that's when people try to say, oh, I love my kid or I love my parents, right?
Yeah.
Is that what it's trying to say?
I feel like that's the interpretation I'm getting from it 100%. Okay. When your family's in disarray, and then you just try to talk about how awesome you are and how pious your family is and all this stuff, right? It's like, well, why tell them? Just show me. You know, you're gonna tell me. It's like Missouri, we're the show me state. Just show me.
Oh my God. Well, okay, that makes me think of like all these social media platforms where people have to show things. Like they will show you pictures of only about how great everything's going.
Like Facebook.
And like, but if you know those people and you know the backstory of them, you're like, I don't understand why they're posting this like loving picture of XYZ when what I know to be true is the complete and utter opposite. Like they're just gushing about, you know, oh, my wife or my daughter or my husband or my
like, doesn't your husband beat you, lady? Like,
and then you behind the scenes, you know, that they are constantly arguing or something. You're like, I'm confused.
Yep. Next best is the person who posts all their shit on social media, which is hilarious. When you get some of these people who just like have crazy and they just put it up there, you're like,
oh yeah,
right.
yeah, that too. They
overshare on Facebook. But anyway, it makes for
that
good
too.
I guess.
That too. Oh man.
Yeah.
Okay, I love it. That was a great one to break down.
Thank you.
I will read Dwight Goddard, verse 18. The palliation of the inferior, once again. When the great Tao is lost sight of, we still have the idea of benevolence and righteousness. Prudence and wisdom come to mind when we see great hypocrisy. When relatives are unfriendly, we still have the teachings of filial piety and paternal affection. When the state and the clan are in confusion and disorder, we still have the ideals of loyalty and faithfulness. I want to take each of these lines and break them down. I mean, and just like maybe like think of examples or something, because I think it really helps.
Yeah.
To do that, to make the verse make sense more.
All right, I'll bring it back to us, and then we could just go ahead.
Yeah. So can we start with the palliation of the inferior? So based on what the palliation word means, I sometimes can be dense, so I need a little bit of help with definitions and like giving examples and breaking stuff down. So like in this sense, what do you think? Can we break down the palliation of the inferior and why Dwight would have called this verse that?
Yeah, so totally. I think that what's going on here is that second definition of palliation is totally in full use here, and it's when you're trying to hide your
the gravity of an
shortcomings,
offense.
right?
Yeah, your shortcomings.
Yeah,
hiding your shortcomings by excuses.
Yeah, there you go. Nailed it.
Nice.
Or not only by excuses, but also could be by you're hiding your actions and how bad your actions are by telling people how your these are the rules of this house. Well, why does your house even need rules? Shouldn't the people already just know to be, like
right? Why do you need
like
house
you were saying
rules?
before with laws? Like, why do we need laws? Shouldn't people just know that murder? Do we need a law against murder? Don't we know it's wrong?
Right. It's like when McDonald's made the whole like, don't drop this on your lap because you could burn yourself. Like, do we need
the coffee? Yeah, the coffee might be hot.
Yeah.
Think so? Thanks. Yeah. That's only because they got sued, but it's like, yeah, you're right. If when they were getting sued, if the people on the jury had common sense, they'd be like, this idiot, don't they know coffee's hot? Like, we got to warn you that coffee's hot. Well, guess what? Maybe you should be burned then. Like, you got to learn, like, good thing I wasn't on that jury. This is a hung jury. I ain't fucking. You're like, he's
maybe you could
chill for big McDonald's. They're like, no, this is just ridiculous.
Yeah. Maybe you could have convinced the others and not made it a hung jury.
Yeah, it's possible. And the McDonald's would have probably gave me a bunch of free food, which I would have just put in a closet for like 10 years later, and it's still the same.
Still look the same.
All right. So
okay, so hiding the shortcomings by, what did you say again?
Hiding your shortcomings basically by parading around and showing people all your great rules or your whatever it is, your fancy words that you have instead of your actions, right? So you're hiding your actions that are your shortcoming, your inferior actions. You're hiding them with flourishing words or rules or whatever, because then people just automatically assume if you're telling people you have rules, it's because you want them to assume that everybody in your family or whoever follows these rules, like, look at how good we are. We have these rules.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, why do you need rules? Yeah.
That's kind of like, it makes me think of a cult,
Yeah.
And the rules that you follow. So you assume that everyone's following those rules if they're in the cult, where behind the scenes, they may be doing the complete opposite, right? Especially the main leader, the main cult leader will be the hypocrisy that we see in the next verse. It says, prudence and wisdom come to mind when, we didn't even do the first line, but yeah, there it is. We see great hypocrisy.
Yeah, it's like Jimmy Swaggart. You remember that guy?
Yeah, but not in detail. He was just
He was like
another
a
cult
born
leader.
again Christian guy who'd be on TV, and he's this evangelist, but then he got caught with hookers. It's like, but I got to give it to good old Jimmy Swagger, because did he let getting caught with hookers stop him? No, he just went on TV and cried about it and said how sorry he was. It was fucking great. And people were like, "Oh, he's sorry." So when life gives you prostitution charges, you just make crying and make more,
Apologies.
yeah, apologies,
Excuses.
and you get more fans, right? He probably
Well,
got
there
it.
you go. That's palliation. He was hiding his shortcomings by parading around his,
Yeah,
you know, his
his faith.
apologies.
Yeah, and his apologies and his forgive, what is it, his when you have like penance, or you have like his forgiveness, but the other way around, his whatever. I think you guys get what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
It's the word I'm looking for. Anyway, yeah, he was just trying to say how sorry he was, basically. I learned my lesson.
When it
Like,
wasn't really.
how many other times did you have hookers though and you didn't learn the lesson because you didn't get caught, Jimmy? It's all
Yeah,
right.
exactly. It's like a little kid,
Do it till you're done. Yeah, exactly.
getting caught in the cookie jar, and it's like, oh, I really didn't mean to.
That's what
Really.
palliation of the inferior is. Definitely a kid getting his hand stuck in a cookie jar, getting caught and then being sorry only because he was caught.
Oh, wow. Yes. 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 Wow. Well, let's continue. So, that first line says, when the great Tao is lost sight of, we still have the idea of benevolence and righteousness. So, what can you give me some breakdown of this verse with that in
This
mind?
really reminds me of the first verse, my breakdown of the first verse or the first sentence in the Stephen Mitchell verse. This is kind of on par with that because it says when the great Tao is lost sight of.
Hmm.
So that basically means that, like, in my interpretation, that when everybody or the majority of people in a society lose the sight of the Tao or the way, they lose this way, right? Think about how things are now with materialism being so rampant, right? You could say that our society has lost the way, right? You could,
Mhm.
probably a fair thing to say. And
They've lost their way. They've lost their Tao. Just kidding.
exactly,
The
but we still
Tao.
have the idea of benevolence and righteousness, right? So he's looking at it a little bit differently. But he uses the title, the palliation of the inferior. He uses that right in the beginning to let you know that this is what's going on here, right? These people are getting caught with their hands in the cookie jar and they're trying to say that, oh, we have benevolence and righteousness. We have this
Mhm.
idea of it, and they could talk about this idea all day, but there's no action, right? Just
Mm,
it's in America, words are cheap, right? Show
mm.
me some action.
Wow. Prudence and wisdom come to mind when we see great hypocrisy. Yeah, let's think about that in the with an example in mind of, perhaps like a cult leader who's been hypocritical.
Well, you can even look at Donald Trump, right? President of the United States for a while, allegedly. And this is a good one because any politician at that level, you could point out the hypocrisy. Like Barack Obama ran because he said, we're going to end all these wars. And then there's more, he just ramped it up, right? So it's the same thing. There's hypocrisy, but when we see great hypocrisy, you could look at it in the reverse. Prudence and wisdom come to mind. So you might have this person who looks prudent and wise, but they're just saying these things that make them seem prudent and wise to people who aren't paying attention closely enough. That's kind of
Mm,
the interpretation I get out of that.
okay. When relatives are unfriendly, we still have the teachings of filial piety or filial piety and paternal affection. That's very similar to the one we just talked about in
Yeah.
Stephen Mitchell.
Yeah, but I
Um,
like how he's saying we still have the teachings. So those teachings are still around. It's like the verse that sarcastic warlock quotes ad nauseum, which I love. But he talks about how, like, to the learned or to the sage, the written texts are like water to a floodplain. Basically, like
oh,
we don't need
yes.
those texts. We already know what we're doing. These are just
Okay.
people who don't know.
Oh, w- Oh, wait. Wow. That just makes me think of what we were just talking about in the Stephen Mitchell version. Yeah, I lost my train of thought, but wow, just multiple different ways of looking at this. Can you repeat that again for me?
Yeah, the part about sarcastic warlock always quotes this verse from the Bhagavad Gita, and we've talked about it a bunch, but basically it says that to the sage, the holy
Oh,
texts are like water to a floodplain. Like you don't need any more water on a floodplain, and the sage doesn't need a holy text because he already is there. So like in our culture, you
yeah,
always see the priest carrying around the Bible, and they
yeah,
always got their holy books full. The true sage doesn't need any of that because he already knows
right.
you know.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So it makes me think of what I was talking about with the Stephen Mitchell version, where we're talking about once you know your recipe, you don't need to look at it anymore. Like, yeah, maybe if you wanted to quote it and say, here is the actual quote of it, you need 1 cup of this and 1 cup of that. But, you know, eventually you just eyeball it,
I got a way to put it. If you went into a restaurant, a really nice restaurant, and you went in the back and the chef was looking
at a
at
recipe.
a recipe that he had and he's reading it every time he makes it, would you feel confident about that meal you're about to have? Or if you went back there and that guy was just like throwing eggs around and flipping things and having a good old time, you'd be like, this is going to be a good meal. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, because he knows what he's doing. He has his stuff down. He can like eyeball and measure it with his eyes.
Yet when it
It's
comes
all
to religion, people
by
always
heart.
want their holy figure to have a Bible in their hand or something, or reading the Bible all the time. You know, it's
Wow.
crazy.
I love this. We still have the teachings.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. We still have the teachings. If you really need them, here they are. Awesome. All right, let me
Wow. All right. When the state and the clan are in confusion and disorder, we still have the ideals of loyalty and faithfulness. Yeah, it's kind of like the same thing right there.
Yep.
We still
Just a
have the
different way to say it.
rules, you know.
Yep. We have these ideas of loyalty and faithfulness that we'll talk about all day, but we ain't loyal. We sure ain't
We're
faithful.
not
Right, Bill
acting. We're
Clinton?
we're just speaking. Where was that? Verse 17?
Yeah. Yep.
We just speak. We don't act. Do
They're
as I say, not as I do.
100%. Just like Bill Clinton with Monica Lewinsky, you know. I was like, yeah, all right, let's get back to this. Let's not talk about that guy. All right, so the Stan Rosenthal version: when the way of the Tao is forgotten, kindness and ethics need to be taught. So he's just coming at it from a different angle, right? He's saying instead of these things appearing or instead of the idea of them being around, as you heard the past two versions, in this one, he's saying kindness and ethics need to be taught. Men learn to
Mm-hmm.
pretend to be wise and good. So I like this because there is a little more explanation, right? It's the air
Mm-hmm.
going on. So it's not so much a proverb, but more of kind of telling you how it is. All too
Yeah.
often in the lives of men, filial piety and devotion arise only after conflict and strife. Same thing, right? So you have to have a fight. It's like makeup. It's like break up to make up, right? Is the version that Biggie Smalls would say, we broke up to make up because the makeup sex or whatever is so good. So it's like the same thing, right? You don't need to talk about this filial piety or devotion and only when there's conflict and strife, because then you have to try to mend it or fix what's broken. But if it's not broken, you're just living piety and devotion. You know what I mean? You don't have to, the ideas of it don't have to come up. And just as loyal ministers all too often appear when the people are suppressed. And it's funny because it kind of is like a synchronicity to what I was saying about priests with a Bible.
Mm.
It's that same kind of thing. Like our priests have to walk around with a Bible when the people are suppressed, right? Like you have to
Oh,
appear that you're
man.
pious and you have devotion to God. When
Holy smokes.
could it be? And again, we're not shitting on any priests or anything. We're just oversharing.
Break up to make up. That's all we do. First you hate me, then you love me. That's okay for fools. That's the song I thought of.
Yeah, and that's probably the
It's an
song
old
that
song.
Biggie was thinking of when he said that line. R.I.P. Biggie Smalls. I guess I heard they. Oh no, it was Tupac. They found his killer or something. I don't know. All right.
What?
Yeah, I guess. Who
Mhm.
knows? So you want to read the Aleister
Aleister.
Crowley version?
Yeah.
This will send us out of here.
All right. So Aleister calls us the decay of manners. Stan called it the decay of ethics. And of course, Dwight Goddard called it the palliation of the inferior.
I love
All
it.
right. So Aleister says, when men abandoned the way of the Tao, benevolence and justice became necessary. Then also was need of wisdom and cunning, and all fell into illusion. When harmony ceased to prevail in the 6 spheres, it was needful to govern them by manifesting sons. When the kingdoms and races became confused, loyal ministers had to appear. He says almost the same thing as Stan Rosenthal. It's crazy how sometimes this happens.
Yeah, it is, right?
Yeah.
I'm
All
just
right. So
chatting.
when men abandoned the way of the Tao, benevolence and justice became necessary. Well, yeah, it's like you had to teach that again because they just lost their way. Again, the Tao was lost sight of, the Tao was forgotten. So you had to teach the benevolence and justice.
Yep.
Then also was need of wisdom and cunning, and all fell into illusion. That's a little different. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, it definitely is a little more mystical. Uh because it's all so when when you're living by the Tao, it's truth. But right now it fell into an illusion. So we have an illusion of Barack Obama, who's this great family man and definitely not married to another man in a wig, right? We have this illusion that Donald Trump is going to bring us back to this great time and make America great again when
It's
he's
a
just
great age.
yeah, when he's just real estate fucking, whatever, he bangs porn stars, Um so yeah, we have this illusion. That's kind of what I take out of it. That's just a good way to frame it, I guess you could say. Um,
Okay.
and also the need also was need of wisdom and cunning. So before you didn't need wisdom or cunning because you were just living the way, there was no wisdom needed. It wasn't looked at as wisdom, even though it could have been. It was just the way it was.
Yeah.
It's like what I said.
You had to define it. You had to define that you needed wisdom and
Just like when I was talking about Pat Oates and stand-up comedy, when there's a comedian that's like, oh, I did such a good job, I killed it. It's like, no, you just did your job. Like you don't have to. Nobody just when stand-up comedy first started, nobody was saying that they bombed or they killed it or they did well. They were just performing stand-up comedy. Like.
yeah. Like if
But
you have to
now it's
tell somebody, what
yeah,
does that say?
yeah,
I did great. My comedy special is the best. It's the all-time favorite. It's the best of the best.
it's free right now too. I heard. So anyway, I'm just a troll right now. Yeah, no. So and again, I love this Aleister Crowley because it's so different and like mystical, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me bring it back.
Yeah. So then he says, when harmony ceased to prevail in the 6 spheres, is he talking Kabbalistic stuff here?
I think he is, yeah, and it also reminds me of like uh Greek Norse mythology with the
Yeah,
different worlds.
the tree. Right. That's what I thought of
Yeah.
too.
Yep.
Because what are their, I don't know Norse mythology well enough.
I don't know it real well, but I do know that there's just different planes or different worlds or worlds, I guess you could say, that people exist in. And some are like realm with the gods, one's like hell, all this different thing. So if you look at it that way, or whatever way he's trying, maybe he's just using this as an allegory and there really aren't 6 spheres, but he said, when harmony ceased to prevail in the 6 spheres, it was needful to govern them by manifesting sons. So like
Capital sons, capital S too.
they needed
Okay.
to manifest a son, like a son of God or like a
More
uh
gods.
yeah, or gods, exactly. Or rulers. When before
Yeah.
people were just taking care of everything, there you didn't need a ruler. Everybody was just doing what they had to do.
Mm, wow.
All right.
Yep. Wow. Sons, rulers, gods. Exactly.
Yeah.
When the kingdoms and races became confused, loyal ministers had to appear. That's like you said in the Stan Rosenthal version.
Yeah, it's the same. I was going to say it's the same thing, right?
Confused and suppressed. How funny. Aleister says confused. Stan says suppressed.
Yeah, I like the confused one better because it's less victimy than saying
Yeah.
that these people are suppressing other people. Yeah, they could be suppressing their ideas, but you could
Yeah.
start
I
your
like
YouTube
that.
channel and or whatever.
And air it all out.
And that's right, air it out, baby, until you get kicked off. We gotta stop talking. You know what? I'll just say this. I love Chinese food. You know what? Chinese people make great food. Even though they can't drive very well. Damn it, I can't. Just kidding. I've met plenty of Chinese people and they're amazing. And I'm sure some of them are jerks, right? It's like anything else. But yeah, it's funny because of the races thing. So I had to bring it back up. When races became confused, fried chicken appeared. No, oh man, we're definitely getting kicked off now. But I like that because if you think of kingdoms or a race of people in a way, not like we look at it today, but more as in like different people who lived in different sections of the world. When they became confused, then they needed somebody to tell them what to do and where to go and how to do it. And they needed dogma, right? And it's not that in itself the dogma is bad. I think it could have even been born from, it's like they say the path to hell is paved with good intentions. Wise people at the time could have been like, man, these people are fucking terrible. We need to like make a book. We need to write down rules for them. And then generations later, they get these rules. And now it's like, oh, if you don't live by this rule, you're excommunicated or whatever. Or if you say this word, you're going to get kicked off of YouTube or whatever.
Where's
That's why
that?
YouTube needs rules because people just can't, it reminds me of being in Marine Corps boot camp. I was explaining this the other day and I'm going to keep my ideas of what I'm going to do to myself in the future because I keep talking about it. But I was telling the story about when I was in the Marines, and in boot camp, you have 4 drill instructors in the Marine Corps. One of them is the senior drill instructor. He's like the boss of all of them. And he kind of acts like a parent to you, like a mother or father or whatever, but he still yells at you, but he's pretty cool. And then you have one that's always an asshole. No matter what, this guy's always like just a jerk. You have one guy that's always cool, but what ends up happening is since he's so cool, people will overstep their bounds and they'll, start talking too loud or whatever it is. And then everyone gets in trouble. Right. And I just watched this happen time and time again. This is why I nailed boot camp. I'm like, oh, I see what they're doing. And then one other guy is kind of like under the senior drill instructor. He's like the second in command and he could be an asshole or cool. It's just so weird how that happens. And I always noticed that every time we were stuck with the guy or every time we were with the guy who was really cool, people would take advantage of him. And then he would have to like get pissed off or freak out, or the other drill instructors would have to come and punish us for something. And it's the same thing, right? People just can't self-govern themselves. So other people have to come in and step in that role for them. It goes back to what we say about slave and masters. If you're not a master of your own mind, of your own inner world, you're going to be a slave to somebody else because you're a slave, to your own terrible mind. And as above, so below, right? Even if you're
Indeed.
working at McDonald's, you could be a master of your mind.
And would you say that it's kind of obvious we're in like a Kali Yuga because of all this?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of strife. And, contrary to what most people say about the Kali Yuga and how terrible it is, it's a great time because it's the time with the most resistance. Right now, if we were a weightlifter, we'd be lifting our maximum weight right now. We'd be doing deadlifts, whatever, we'd be pushing hard as opposed to the golden age where I think it's just
it's a respite, I think.
Yeah. And it's
a
possible
respite.
that when they talk about the cycles, the Iron Age could create the Gold Age. And that's where you get the true meaning of alchemy, right? Where you turn lead into gold because if it gets so bad, so many people are going to have to actually stand up. And the ones who shine, maybe they're the ones that create the next.
Oh, shit.
So
like, wow. It makes me also think of like tried by the fire. The gold gets kind of, what is it called when the
smelted?
yeah. And
Yeah,
then
you
you
burn
get
out all the impurities.
yeah, you burn out the impurities, and then you get the golden age.
That's what's happening right now. Go turn on Facebook or Instagram, and the impurities are being burned away, man. Some of them can even get experimental medical serums if they want, but no, and again, it's not like I think that I'm any better because I see certain things that other people don't. I'm just seeing a pattern, right? And because of my pattern recognition and awareness, I want to be on this side of it, right? I want to be on the side that where my consciousness expands, and I'm able to maybe create the future age. Who knows? Maybe, I mean, not by myself, but I think what happens is people who survive these trying times are the ones that get into the roles of leadership and get put on top for a time. And maybe that's how it's created. And you see a lot of this in different like Lord of the Rings, for example, right? The age that they were in before, where they had to fight for the ring and they had to destroy it. Basically the whole story of the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings all takes place in the third age. And then the fourth age, the next age, is the one where not that it's perfect, but men are finally in control. Like good, decent men are in control for a while, and they have their kingdoms and everyone's living in peace, and there's no trolls or orcs, that's the word I was looking for, coming over the mountains or whatever. It's like a golden age, same thing.
Yeah, what you were also what you talked about also made me think of this Kelly Yuga that we're allegedly in is also the greatest catalyst for change and growth. And that's also the Law of One talks about that, like catalysts for growth.
All right. Well, I think we reached the end of this. Really quickly, I just want to bring up this P word that I mentioned earlier because it's pretty hilarious. You're going to get a kick out of this. So I was reading the Sun card. If you go check out that Terrible podcast, it'll be available on Halloween at terrible.com. We talked about 4 different cards from the Edgar Allan Poe deck. And one of the meanings, one of the words in the reversed, it just lists a few words for the reversed. And this word came up and I had no idea what it was. So it's Panglossian. It's Panglossian is the word, right? Panglossian, marked by the view that all is for the best in the best possible worlds. Wait, let me read that again. Marked by the view that all is for the best in this best of possible worlds. Excessively optimistic.
Would that be us?
Right? Oh, it gets better. Hang on. And then so I scroll down here. It says, did you know Dr. Pangloss was the pedantic old tutor in Voltaire's satirical novel Candide?
Candide.
Pangloss was an incurable, albeit misguided optimist who claimed that all is for the best in this best of all possible worlds. So persistent was he in his optimism that he kept it even after witnessing and experiencing great cruelty and suffering. The name Pangloss comes from the Greek pan, meaning all, or the god Pan, right? You think of that, pandemic, and glossa, meaning tongue, suggesting glibness and talkativeness. So I like this because they're looking at it as a negative attribute, that you're always overly optimistic, where I could see where it could bite you in the ass if it turns into like new agey stuff like we talk about all the time, right? Like you're but if you're just in your viewpoint, right, not in your actions, but in your viewpoint, you see these things going around you and you're just like, oh man, it's all for the best. And I said that on the show. I'm like, this is like exactly contrary to the Tao. This is hilarious. So I figured you'd enjoy that.
What do you mean contrary to the Tao?
Because the Tao says that the world is perfect. Well, no, so the word actually lines up with the Tao, but the idea that's a bad thing.
Oh, the idea that it's a bad thing
is contrary to the Tao. Yes. Thank you for the clarification there, Sharon. That makes more sense.
Yeah. But it's saying the same thing.
Yeah. So,
so are we now, is this a new cult of Panglossianism?
We should do an episode on that. That's great. Yeah, let us know what you guys think. You guys want to start a cult of Panglossianism? I'll be the cult leader. I already look like Jesus. Sharon could be Mother Sharon instead of Mother Mary. Sharon is my mom who gave birth to me through, what's the word? Even though I'm older than her.
Yeah.
Through divine intervention or whatever, or immaculate conception.
Immaculate.
That means Cody's a god. Oh, Jesus. All right, we're done now. I'm sorry. I'm just scatting. Anyway, shout out to the chat. What's going on, chat? Do you guys want to join our cult? We can't wait. Thank you guys for hanging out. Bear Pelagic, Joe from Jokers. Remember, next week he's going to be on the Oversharing show. That's our plan. Looks like it's just them talking most of the time. Where are our Overshare nights? That's all right.
Yeah.
Good for you guys. Yeah, we did it on a Wednesday. I don't think anyone's really expecting. Nobody expects the French Revolution or Oversharing on a Wednesday. So
right. Well, we didn't.
Thank
We're
you
doing
guys.
it again next week.
Yeah, make sure you go to morelawsmoreproblems.com. Check out the Oversharing tab there. There's several ways to support us, but the best way to support us is to just like this video, come to these when we have lives and premieres, come chat, hang out, share the show, comment, let us know what you want to talk about. Let us know if you disagree or agree, or if you want to join our Panglossian cult. So you can do all that in the comments section or at morelawsmoreproblems.com. You can join our cult. Yeah, and what's the correct way? Once you start oversharing.
Oh, you started it now. Then you totally stop being a Karen.
That's right. We didn't reverse this time. And remember, we're not telling you how to live.
But could it be we're just offering you some experiences of our own?
Yeah, in a way maybe to live a little more at ease. That's all.
Yeah.
Speaking of at
easily,
ease,
perhaps.
thank you guys so much. And we'll see you next Wednesday with Joe. Take care and have a great rest of your week. Later.
Bye.
And we're done. All right,
Be
cool.
just